Seches Bava Kamma Daf Yud Zayin. It concludes the first parak of the Masechta and begins the second parak Kesed Regel. So the end of the first parak is a bit of a gadata about the Kavur and the Levaya of Chizkiyahu HaMelech, and then we'll get into some of the Maila of Limud HaTorah and Mitzvah. So the Gemara says, the last line on Daf Tes Zayin, that it quotes a pasuk in Divrei Yamim, which says that they did a kavod for Chizkiyahu HaMelech. And we learn from there that what was the cover that they did? They made a yeshiva on top of his kever. So through the machlokes as to how long the yeshiva was there for as this covered, Rabbi Nasan and the Rabbanan, one says 3 days, one says 7 days, and there's a third opinion that says 30 days. The Gemara quotes a brisa that says what was the cover that they did for him, that they had people go out in front of him by the Levaya, 36,000 people, all with torn clothing. The Gemara calls it revealing the shoulder, that they tore kriya. That's what Rav Yehuda says. It said Rav Nechemia, but they says the same thing that they did for Achav, who was a Rasha, so that's not much of a kavod. So the kavod is, says the Gemara, that they put a Sefer Torah on his mita, and they said that this person kept what is written in this Sefer Torah. Someone asks, that's not much of a kavod either, because they do that today also for Talmidei Chacham. The Gemara says, no, they bring a Sefer Torah out for Talmidei Chacham, but they don't put it on the actual mita. Some say that the difference is that even today they do put it on the mita, but they don't say that he kept what it says in there. Coach Rabbi Bar Brachano says we were walking after or with Rabbi Yochanan in order to learn from him, and he stopped to go to the bathroom, and we asked him what's pshat in this, and he didn't answer until he came out, washed his hands, put on his tefillin, and said the bracha, and then he said, even today we do say that they were Mekayim, what it says in there, but we don't say that he learned it. Limed, that he learned it, that's a special kavod. So when it says, that only makes sense if learning is a higher madrega than Maisa, than doing the actual action. But that's not true, because we have a Shmaitza that we said that the greatness of learning that it brings to doing the mitzvahs. So you see that the Maisa, the mitzvahs, is greater than the learning itself. So the Gemara answers, no. If someone is learning in order to do, then the doing is greater than the learning. But if he's learning in order to teach others, there the actual learning is greater. So therefore the mila of learning is actually greater in this case. The Gemara concludes the parak with a drush on a pasuk in Yeshaya. It says, Ashreichem zoirei al kol mayim, meshachei regel hashar v'chamar. Praiseworthy are those who plant on all waters, who send the foot of the ox and the donkey. Says the Gemara, what does this mean? So Gemara's drush is, it means that anyone who learns Torah and is Isaac in Chesed receives the inheritance of the two Shvatim, which the Gemara will say is Yosef and Yisachar. So how do you see that? So Zoirei is Tzedakah and Chesed, like it says Zoru Lachem Tzedakah v'Katzu Lefi Chesed. And it says Mayim refers to Torah, like it says Hoikol Tzamei L'chula Mayim, which is learning. And what is the Shar and Chamar? So that refers to the Nachla of the two Shvatim, Yosef and Yisachar. And we're two Pshatim in what that Nachla is. For Yosef, the first Pshat is Kila, meaning Chopa, like it says Ben Paras Yosef, B'nai Tzada Alei Shor, that the women walked on the wall to see him. And Yisachar is riches, as it says Yisachar Chamar Garam, which refers to donkey loads with riches. And the other explanation is that Yosef means that his enemies fall before him, like it says, Bohem Amim Yenagah Yachdav Afsei Aretz. And wisdom is the bracha of Yisachar, like it says, B'nai Yisachar, Yoidei Bina, L'Itim Ladas, Mayaseh Yisrael. This concludes the first parak, and now we begin the second parak, which discusses the halachos of regel. So regel, as we know, means walking and breaking things along the way. So the Mishnah begins with a number of cases of regel, some of which are nezek shalem and some of which are half nezek. We'll have to learn to understand each one. So first we have a repetitive phrase. It says, how is the av malacha of regel? It's muad, an animal is a muad to break things as it walks. And then it says again, an animal is muad to walk in its normal way and to break things. Gemara will explain why that's repeated. Now we have two cases of chatzi nezek. So it's as if it was kicking, so that's, even though it's with a foot, it's an attack, so that's a chatzi nezek. Or if stones were flying out from under its feet, seemingly as it walks. So that would also be chatzi nezek. That's because of the halacha of tzroiros, flying rocks, which we shall see. Next halacha the Mishnah says is that if it steps on a kli and it breaks it, and a piece flies out and hits another kli and breaks that, so for the first kli it stepped on it, so that's nezek shalim, that's regel. For the second kli it's tzeres because something went flying, so that's chatzi nezek. Next Mishnah says that chickens are muad to walk and break things along the way. If it had a delil, that Rashi says means anything tied to its foot, if it had a delil tied to its foot, or if it was dancing around in an odd way and was breaking things, that would be chatzi nezek, only half the nezek. And now begin the Gemara, which first off explains why the repeated phrase. First it says regel is to walk and break, then it says a behema that walks and breaks is regel. What are those two things? So the Gemara says one is the av malacha of regel, walking and breaking. That's what the pasuk explicitly refers to. And the other one is what's included in the category, which is not mentioned in the psukim, which we'll see in Brisa soon. Anything that breaks along the way that it's walking, but not from its feet. We'll see if its hair hits something, if the body hits something, if the equipment that it's wearing wears something and it hits something. All those things are toldos, and therefore that's what's included in the second phrase. So Gemara asks if that's pshat here, what do you do later on when we discuss shein? And there it again has a repeated phrase. It says shein muedes to eat, and then it says that a behema is muedes to eat. So it's the same repeated phrase. What are we going to say over there? So the question was asked, this exchange is Ravina talking to Rava. So he answered him with a joke, and he said, you know what? I explain one, you explain the other. So the Gemara says, what is really the pshat? What's the reasoning here? So Rav Ashi says that over there, the two phrases, one is talking about where a domesticated animal eats, a behema, and the other is talking about where a chay eats, a wild animal. So the Gemara says, why would I think one and not the other? It says, Vashilach is be'iroi. Be'iroi means a behema, and you may therefore think it's only a behema and not a chaya. And it mentions both of them to show that the word behema includes both a domesticated animal and a chaya and a wild animal. Therefore, they're both included. So the Gemara says, so then you should have said the ikar first, you should have said behema first. Why did you say behema last? First it says shein, and then it mentions behema. So shein is referring to chaya. So you said first chaya, then behema. Doesn't make sense. So Gemara says, yeah, since chaya was a drasha, which it doesn't say explicitly, that's always more beloved to the Tana. You have to work hard to get to it, and therefore it's listed first, and therefore it says first chaya and then behema. So Gemara says, so then in our Mishnah, we should also say the one that's listed explicitly second. It should first say behema muedes, because that's talking about other things that it's wearing, and then it should mention regel. Why does it say regel first? That is the explicit one, that's not the chaviva. So Gemara says, no. When we're talking about shein, they're both avos melacha. They're both avos nezikin. One is an av of the behema, one's an av for the chaya. But so therefore, which one are you going to say first? The one which is more chaviv. But here you have an av and a tolda. If the tolda is more chaviv, it doesn't mean that you're going to say it first. You have to say the av before the tolda. Second shot is that we wanted to mention regel before behema because our last Mishnah was talking about regel, so we flow into this topic here, which is the topic of regel itself. Now the Gemara quotes the Brisa, which explains what the other parts, the other told us of regel are. So the Brisa says that an animal is muad to walk in a normal way and to break things. How is that? So if a behema enters a chutzner, the chutzner of the person who is damaged, the chutzner hanizik, and it causes damage with its body as it's walking, or with its hair as it's walking, or with the saddle that is on the back, or with the shlif, the packages, the saddle vags that it's wearing, or with the bit that's in its mouth, or the bell around its neck, or if it's not an ox, if it's a donkey and it has the weight that it's carrying for all these things, you pay nezek shalem. These are all regel, and it's nezek shalem as long as it's in rishus hanizik, as we said. Now, the concept of tzroiros, which is flying rocks, so that's a machlekes. The Tana Kamma holds that that's chatzi nezek, and Sumchis holds that it's nezek shalem. So Sumchis here adds it to the list of things which are nezek shalem. So Sumchis says also rocks and a pig, a chazir, that was nosing around in the garbage and it caused a damage, pays nezek shalem for that also. Says Gemara Pshita, why would I think the pig is any different than anything else? Gemara says no, it's referring to where it flew out, and therefore it's tzeres. These are two halachas that Sumcha is bringing of tzeres. So Gemara says, Tzoros, flying things, flying rocks, flying trash from the pig, what does that have to do with this? Why is Sumchas bringing that in here? So Gemara says you have to adjust it as if something's missing here, and it means to say as follows. The Bava Kamma lists all the things that are Nezek Shalem. Then it mentions that Tzoros, which if it is normal, meaning it flew out in a normal way, that's only Chatzi Nezek. Or a pig that's nosing in the trash and things flew out is also Chatzi Nezek. And on that we bring in Sumchas who says Tzoros and the pig are both Nezek Shalem. Now, the Gemara now quotes another brisa about these halachas, and it talks about the chicken. And it gets more deeply into the halachas of flying things. And we're going to have to define, when we say something flies, it's only Chatzi Nezek, what is that referring to? Generally, we're going to say it means anything which is broken because of the energy of the animal, not the body of the animal. Well, let's see what the brisa says. So the brisa says, chickens which are flying from place to place, and they break kalim with their wings. So if it's contact with the wings, it's Nezek Shalem. If it's the air that gets pushed by the wings, then it's only Chatzi Nezek. And again, Sumchas says Nezek Shalem, because Sumchas holds Tzoros pays Nezek Shalem. And we have another brisa that says if the chickens are dancing around on top of dough for bread or on top of fruit, so if it makes them filthy or it pecks at them, so that's Nezek Shalem. But if it makes dirt fly or rocks fly and that ruins them, for that you pay Chatzi Nezek according to the Bava Kamma and Nezek Shalem according to Sumchas. Another brisa that says if the chickens were flying from place to place and air moved from under the wings and broke kalim, you pay Chatzi Nezek according to Bava Kamma. And here there is no Sumchas, so it's a Stam Mishnah like the Rabbanan. Now, the Gemara discusses this machlokes a little bit more deeply. It says Rava, Sumchas, I understand, he holds that the energy counts as the body of the animal. The koyach is kigufay. But according to the Bava Kamma, how do you come up with Chatzi Nezek? If you hold koyach is like the guf, so you should pay full Nezek. And if you hold that koyach, things that fly from your force, is not your responsibility, so you shouldn't pay at all. So how do you come up with Chatzi Nezek? So Rav later said that they hold that koyach is kiguf, but there is a special halacha l'Moshe Sinai that you only pay half Nezek for that. Now, how do you define what's Nezek Shalem and what's half Nezek? What's called koyach, what's called guf? So Rav gives a rule. It says any type of contact, which if a zav would have that type of contact with an object, it would be metameyit. So as far as nezikin, that's Nezek Shalem. Anything which is zav's the contact would not be enough to be metameyit, so that is half Nezek. So Gemara says, so what's Rava saying? He's just telling us halach of tzoros, anything which flies, it's through the air, so there's no contact, so it's not metame. So that's Chatzi Nezek. So what's Rava adding? So Gemara says, Rava is talking about a case of a wagon. That if you have a calf pulling a wagon, and it crushes things, so that's Nezek Shalem. So Gemara quotes a brisa that says this. If an animal, it says that an animal is mu'ah to break things as it walks. How is it? Behem which enters a chatzar hanizik, and it causes damages with the body as it walks, or with the tear, or with the saddle that's on it, the shlif, the bit in the mouth, the bell around the neck, the burden on the donkey, any of these things that we saw in the Mishnah and the Brisa before. And now it adds, or if you have a calf pulling a wagon, you pay Nezek Shalem for that as well. And the reason you see that from Rava is because if a Zav would be sitting in that wagon, it would be Matame, whatever rolls under the wagon, because Zav is Matame, anything that it sits on that is normal for it to sit on. Okay. Next, halacha, the Gemara quotes another brisa. It says if you have chickens that were pecking at the rope of a pail, and they break the rope, and the pail falls and it breaks. So they pay Nezek Shalem for that, because their contact is direct. Now, Rav asked a question. If they step on a kli, and it goes flying, and it doesn't break, and then it rolls to somewhere else, and it breaks there, do you view the moment at which the chicken contacted the kli, and it was with the body of the chicken, so it's Nezek Shalem? Do you view the moment at which it broke and was flying away from the chicken, and therefore it should only be Chatzi Nezek? What do you look at? So the Gemara says you should be able to find an answer from a different halacha, one which was said by Rabbah, because Rabbah said somebody threw a kli off a roof, so, and as it's falling, someone hits it with a stick and breaks it. So the second person is putter from having to pay for it, because we say that the kli is already viewed as broken from the time that it's falling, and therefore the kli that he broke is already broken kli. So therefore this question is already answered. The Gemara says, yeah, Rabbah has an answer for that. Rabbah holds that halacha. Rabbah, though, has a question. He would have a question in both this case and that case. So now the Gemara starts bringing in proofs. The Gemara's proof is a brisa that says that hidus, meaning the dancing around of chickens, is not a muad, and some say it is a muad. Machlokes, is that muad or not? Which means machlokes if that pays nezek shalem or not. So the Gemara says, why should hidus not be muad? It's a common thing for the chickens to do. It must be it's referring to where it danced around and it sent something flying and it broke when it landed. And that's exactly our machlokes. One holds that since it hit it, it's nezek shalem, and one holds since it flew before it broke, it's chatzi nezek, exactly the case that Rava asked. So Gemara says, no, not necessarily is that our case. It could be that it actually got hit by rocks, meaning the chickens were dancing around, they made rocks fly, and that broke the kli. So it's a classic case of tzroiris, and the machlokes is exactly the machlokes between Sumchus and Rabbanon, is tzroiris nezek shalem or chatzi nezek.